Hi everyone, this is Heather. Today I wanted to share with you my testimony. Testimonies have a lot of layers because it's not that we see God all in one moment. We experience God every day, but there are moments where we have a large revelation of who God is. And for me, it was definitely a slow progression because of being a child and not really having anyone teach me about who Jesus was. And I didn't have like supernatural experiences where I went to heaven or anything. Nothing like super dramatic happened to me, even though I do believe my life is dramatic, and I do believe almost everybody's lives are very dramatic, and that's how God works through our lives, is because they're imperfect. And even if you are born into a Christian family, you will still have a testimony with many layers. And so for me, the first layer was realizing that I have a community that actually cares about me, and it was through going to a church that invited me to go to Bible study. And when they asked me if I wanted to believe in God, I said yes. And I didn't even know what I was saying yes to, but I knew that it was more love than I had ever received at home. And looking back in my life, like, that was the first moment where I did encounter the Lord. But there's so many layers to him. Like, I had to follow him in my heart and know that he was a best friend for me. And when I decided that he was my best friend and that he would never leave me, I would talk to him all the time about school. But it wasn't really until college when I started knowing who God was after falling into adultery. And I didn't even know it was adultery at the time. I thought I just married someone without actually going to court and marrying. And it's true, I did marry that person in the spiritual realm, and I thought that was okay, but apparently it's not, and you have to marry someone on a physical paper before you actually do anything. So I learned that, you can't just choose anybody. And after some time, I also learned that God really loved me so much to forgive me of that one sin. I had sinned so many times when I was younger, but it was like things that when I knew who God was, I kind of just stopped it. And certain things I had a hard time stopping, and it prevented me from seeing God because I didn't really understand what the problem with that sin was. And so, continuing to sin in that areas does keep those scales on. And after a while, when I realized that was a sin, that I had committed adultery, I realized that God's love for me was very deep, like the woman at the well who had 6 or 7 husbands. I think she had a lot of husbands, and she was really loved by God because she had sinned so much. She hurt herself, and then God said, if other people sinned there, they couldn't throw a stone at her. And I felt like, I was that lady. But it wasn't until much later that I realized that God didn't want me to choose a certain life for myself, but I had already been stuck in a relationship and had 3 children. And so basically I didn't think I could do anything with my life, and that was kind of a trap of the enemy to get me to be unfaithful to God, to not believe that God was much bigger. So I decided to take life into my own hands and go to pharmacy school, and that would be the way that I would support my family. But the Lord, he didn't want me to do that. He wanted him to be glorified. So after maybe over 10 years, I decided to follow the Lord, but I didn't really understand what that meant. I thought that I could just leave my job and then do another job that's that he I thought guided me to, which was landscape architecture, because I suddenly fell in love with designing and being able to guide people's vision, like God's vision, through, what I designed. But that wasn't what God wanted me to do, like in the physical realm. He wanted me to have impact in the spiritual realm, which is, being a landscape architect in the spiritual realm, being able to guide people's vision and their identity in God. And that, like, after realizing that took a long time to make God my boss, even though I said that I wanted him to be my boss, and I quit my job because I was very lost as to how I was to minister to people. But then I realized what talents I had, and that's, the layers to my testimony. It took maybe 30-something years to get to this point, even though I knew God was real when I was in middle school. But I want to encourage you guys today that your story isn't over, and that, you have to be patient with yourself and your journey with God, because impatience can cause yourself to not love yourself as much as he does, and everything is for his glory. You can't rush the process, but you should go through the process of discovering who God is so that you aren't delayed. Because I do believe that I was delayed because it took me that long to know God, to chase after God. But people who are on fire for God, they never let their fire burn out, but I did. So I just want to encourage you to stay on fire for God and to focus on God, and to never give up seeing him more, because you have so many veils, so many onion layers to peel off from your eyes, and just continue to seek the truth and his love. Don't ever get away from his love, because in that way you can also feel like you're not good enough, because his love makes you good enough. His sacrifice makes you good enough. And that testimony is going to be so powerful. And I pray that this blesses you today. Amen.